Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So we are now just 7 days away from possibly defaulting on our debts and no longer being able to pay all of our bills. And according to experts, if we're not able to do this, it's very possible that Social Security payments could be delayed, which has a lot of Americans who are currently receiving Social Security benefits very worried. Can't really blame them because a lot of Americans rely almost entirely on these checks. There's a lot of Americans where Social Security income is actually 90% of what they bring in. So obviously this is going to be a huge loss if these payments are not going out on time. So in today's video, we are going to go over some updates in regards to the debt ceiling negotiations. Now, before we go ahead and dive into the main content of today's video, if you wouldn't mind helping me out real quickly by just giving this video a like, that just helps out with the good old YouTube algorithm, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. Okay, so yesterday, once again, they were back in the negotiating room and they tried to get a little bit closer to reaching a deal. Some people say they're very far apart. Others are saying they are getting closer to reaching a deal. But by all accounts, it seems like spending levels in regards to how much they're going to be spending this year and next year, they're still pretty far off in reaching a deal. Now, they are running out of time because, as I mentioned, 7 days away from possibly defaulting on our debts. If June 1st is in fact that date in which we would default, obviously this would have a lot of very negative economic consequences. Now, let's go ahead and pull up the calendar here for May and just take a look. Once again, today, members of the House are actually going to be going home later on this afternoon for Memorial Day weekend. And I think that really says something about in terms of where negotiations currently are, because if they were getting pretty close to reaching a deal and they thought they could make a deal and reach a deal either today or tomorrow, perhaps they would not be sending them home for Memorial Day weekend. They would say, hey, let's stick around for a couple more days. We're getting close. We're probably going to be voting on this bill either maybe today or tomorrow. But instead, they're saying, go ahead, go home. We'll call you back, and you can be back here within 24 hours after reaching a deal. Now, keep in mind, in order for the House Speaker and Kevin McCarthy to become the House Speaker, he had to agree to certain rules, and one of those rules was whenever they write a bill, each member of the House of Representatives has to have at least 3 days to read over the text of the bill before actually voting on it. So like last year and the years before with Nancy Pelosi as the House Speaker, they could write a bill and then Nancy Pelosi would say, hey, you got to vote on it in the next 6 hours, even though it's 1,000 pages long. And none of these people would actually read the bill, right? They would just pass it and none of them would even know what was in the bill. But with Kevin McCarthy as the Speaker, they were given 3 days, which still really isn't all that long, but they're going to be given 3 days to read through the entire text. So they'll actually probably know what's in the bill before voting on it. So again, looking at the schedule here, they're going to be going home this afternoon on the 25th, and then they're going to be going back to their district on the 26th to work. They're going to be off through the 27th through the 29th, and then they won't actually be back in Washington until June 5th. So that's going to be after the June 1st deadline. Obviously, once they reach a deal, they're going to be coming back to Washington to vote on it. But let's say that, just for example, they're able to reach a deal on Friday. It's going to take at least 24 to 48 hours to write the bill. So even if they're able to write the bill by Saturday, they're going to be given 3 days to read over the bill. So that's going to be Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday that they're going to be given to read over the bill. Maybe they'll vote on it late Tuesday night, passes through the House, and then it goes to the Senate on Wednesday, passes the Senate, and then Biden is able to sign it into law. But as you can see there, that requires actually coming to an agreement within the next couple of days, which, you know, by all accounts, it seems like they're pretty far apart. So I'm not sure whether or not they're going to be able to reach an agreement, but they're obviously on a very tight timeline, considering it is going to take 1 to 2 days to write the bill, 3 days to read over it, and then it has to pass through both the House and the Senate before Biden signs it into law. So not sure whether or not they're going to have the time to get this done. So according to CNN, House to recess Thursday will be called back for debt ceiling vote if deal is reached. So the House Majority Leader Steve Scalise has announced that the House will recess following votes on Thursday and will be called back to vote if a debt limit deal is reached. Quote, following tomorrow's votes, if some new agreement is reached between President Joe Biden and Speaker Kevin McCarthy, members will receive 24 hours notice in the event we need to return to Washington for any additional votes, either over the weekend or next week, he said on Wednesday. Negotiations are ongoing in an attempt to reach a deal, but major differences between House Republicans and the White House still have yet to be bridged, and the pressure is only intensifying as the risk of default grows ever more real with each day. Negotiators for the White House and House GOP met again on Wednesday, this time at the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Later in the day, McCarthy said that during the 4-hour meeting, talks moved in a positive direction, but indicated that there are still substantial issues to resolve. McCarthy told CNN's Manu Raju, when asked if the White House moved closer to GOP demands on spending cuts, he said, quote, there was a number of issues that are out there that we've been working on. I think being able to find some ways that we can probably get to fruition on a couple of these, there's still a number of these out there. McCarthy would not provide specific details on sticking points, but he also said that he is not budging from his demand to cut spending and that work requirements for social safety net programs are on the table. Republicans have long said that spending cuts must be paired with any increase in the debt limit, an issue that is proving to be the central sticking point as Democrats argue the cuts Republicans want are too extreme, though the White House has expressed a willingness to cut some spending. Asked if there is any general agreements on cuts, GOP Representative Garrett Graves, who has served as a chief negotiator during the talks, said on Tuesday, quote, no, that's our biggest gap. So apparently, in regards to the spending cuts, that's still the biggest gap. Not sure whether or not they're going to ever be able to come to an agreement on the spending cuts, if either side is going to compromise. Let's hope so, because again, 7 days away from default, which unfortunately could cause the delay in Social Security payments and a lot of very damaging economic consequences. Now, if they're not able to raise the debt ceiling and we're getting closer to that June 1st deadline, there are a couple of different ways out of this. So recently, the Democrats wrote up a discharge petition, which would require at least 218 votes. And if they got 218 signatures for this discharge petition, what it would allow for this to do is they could actually vote on the bill that Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats come up with to raise the debt ceiling, and this would most likely pass through the House. Now, the problem with this is once it reaches the Senate, it would still need 60 votes, and right now there are 49 Republicans, 51 Democrats in the Senate, so it would require at least 11 Republicans if all Democrats got on board with it in the Senate. So if Republicans weren't on board with this bill in the Senate and they're not able to get at least 11 Republicans in the Senate to sign off, then most likely that bill would fail anyways in the Senate as well, and we would be right back at square one. Now, the second way out of this is for Biden to go ahead and use the 14th Amendment to raise the debt ceiling by himself unilaterally, and we have a lot of Democrats calling on Biden to do just this. So Bernie Sanders recently called on Biden to use the 14th Amendment to raise the debt ceiling. Biden said he does not want to do this, but if we get closer to June 1st, let's say we're like May 29th, May 30th, and we're going to default on our debts and cause a lot of negative consequences, perhaps in a last-ditch effort, he will go ahead and do it, because obviously we don't want to cause a lot of economic pain. And really, I think a lot of people would probably be on board with Biden using the 14th Amendment if worse came to worse, even if they don't like him as a president, just to save them from all the damaging economic consequences that could come to fruition if we do default on our debts. I think even a lot of Republican voters would be okay with Biden using it. But let me know in the comment section below, do you think that Biden should use the 14th Amendment if worse comes to worse and it could save us from all these very damaging economic consequences? Now, of course, a lot of seniors receiving Social Security benefits are very concerned, rightfully so, about this whole debt ceiling negotiation that's going on. So according to ABC News, it's not their money. Older Americans worry debt default means no Social Security. So if the United States defaults on its financial obligations, millions of Americans might not be able to pay their bills as well. With Social Security and other government benefits at risk amid a political stalemate over the government's debt ceiling, experts in older Americans told ABC News that the consequences of the impasse in Washington could be dire, including for older Americans who need the money to pay for basic needs such as food, housing, or health care costs. A quarter of Americans over age 65 rely on Social Security to provide at least 90% of their family income, according to the Social Security Administration. Fred Gerner, 86, of New York, told ABC News that he uses his Social Security payment for his $800 rent, but now there is real risk that his payment might not come in time in June, when the Treasury Department says the government might not be able to send him the money he counts on. "It's very stressful, it gives me a heart attack," Gerner said about how the issue has become politicized. So the Social Security Administration plans to send contributions to beneficiaries on 4 dates next month: June 2nd, June 14th, June 21st, and June 28th. Now, SSI payments are actually going to be on June 1st and June 30th next month, and those checks would be the first ones at risk of being delayed, according to Max Rittman, President and CEO of the National Committee to Preserve Social Security and Medicare. So obviously, June 1st is going to be the real deadline here. Over the next couple of days, they definitely need to come to an agreement so they have time to read it, vote on it, pass it through. There's going to be very serious consequences if they're not able to do so. But let me know in the comment section below, are you concerned right now? Are alarm bells going off in your head on whether or not they're actually ever going to be able to come to an agreement and raise the debt ceiling and possibly, make sure that these Social Security payments continue to go out in time? They definitely need to be. They need to get it together in Washington and just do the right thing for the American people. So let's hope for the best here, but that's all the news that I have for today's video. I certainly hope that you enjoyed. If you did, again, I would greatly appreciate if you could give this video a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already, and I will see you in the next video.